Hello. Under the slogan, Young and Fun Philosophy, this is SageSync, which brings the thoughts of philosophers into today's life and delivers them as a story of empathy. Welcome. Today, we're doing a deep dive into something. Well, something that feels a bit backwards, maybe. This idea that maybe, just maybe, getting smarter could actually lead to being less happy.
Right. It definitely goes against the grain, doesn't it? The
Yeah.
usual thinking is, knowledge is power, understanding brings peace.
Exactly. But some really sharp philosophical minds, they kind of question that. So today we're going to explore this potential paradox.
We'll be digging into what thinkers like Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, and Gracián had to say.
Yeah, three big names. And we'll try to unpack their perspectives on this central question. Why might smarter people find themselves, well, more unhappy?
It's fascinating how they all touch on this, even with their different approaches. This idea that more insight doesn't automatically equal more contentment. It might even, unlock new kinds of unease.
Okay, let's start with Schopenhauer. He had this really intense view. He called intellect the ability to see tragedy.
Yeah, right off the bat, not exactly sunshine and rainbows.
No kidding. His basic idea was the clearer you see the world, the more you notice all the suffering, the absurdity of it all.
That's the core of it. For Schopenhauer, a sharp intellect is like a high-definition lens for life's misery. He actually wrote, the wise man suffers more keenly because his insight reveals to him the full extent of life's misery.
Wow. So it's not just that bad things happen.
No, it's that the intelligent person grasps the implications, the patterns, the universality of it. Like, you stub your toe, that hurts. But the insightful person might see it as another tiny piece of evidence for, the fundamental fragility and suffering baked into existence.
Okay, I get that. It's like zooming out and seeing the whole bleak picture, not just your little corner. And he connected this to enlightenment, didn't he? But not in a good way.
Exactly. For him, enlightenment wasn't this blissful arrival. It was more like the start of the real suffering. Because you become aware of what he called the will.
The will, that constant striving, right? This endless cycle of wanting thing.
Precisely. A blind driving force behind everything. It's this nonstop engine of desire that never, ever leads to lasting satisfaction. So the intelligent person doesn't just feel desire.
They understand the whole pointless game.
They see the mechanism. They see it's a cycle, inherently frustrating. They see the chains, like you said earlier. Others might just feel the pull, but the wise person understands the nature of the chain itself.
Yeah, that's pretty bleak. Knowing you're caught in this loop, you can't really escape just by getting the next thing you want.
It leads to disillusionment. Schopenhauer put it powerfully. To the man who has his eyes open, the world reveals itself not as a paradise, but as the workshop of his will.
Workshop of his will. So no romantic illusions, just this cold, relentless process.
Yeah. Life seen without the comforting filters. It appears harsh, fleeting, ultimately driven by this impersonal force. So for Schopenhauer, yeah, wisdom might free your mind, but it saddles you with this profound awareness of sadness and maybe makes you feel pretty isolated.
It definitely makes you question what happiness is. Maybe it requires a certain blindness.
Yeah.
Or at least not looking too closely.
Which brings us nicely to Nietzsche. He also saw a link between wisdom and suffering, but his angle was, well, different, more dynamic maybe.
How so? Still pain involved, I gather.
Oh, definitely pain.
Yeah.
But for Nietzsche, wisdom wasn't just seeing the suffering like Schopenhauer. It was forged through it. It was about the strength to internalize life's hardest truths.
Okay, so not just perception, but processing.
Yes. He famously said, without pain, there is no true growth. He saw hardship not just as something to endure, but as the actual catalyst for deeper understanding and becoming stronger.
And part of that pain comes from seeing the world clearly, like Schopenhauer said, the intellect's sharp vision.
Exactly. That sharp vision reveals the world's harshness, its complexities. But Nietzsche's move is to say, confront that harshness.
Yeah.
Don't just observe it and despair.
Okay. And his wise person is someone who has the guts to do that, to question everything.
Right. Someone who can see through society's convenient lies, its comfortable morals, its, superficial ways of living, and even ridicule them.
But doing that probably doesn't make you popular.
Not usually, no. Nietzsche knew this. He saw these truth-tellers as often lonely, maybe seen as weird or difficult by the crowd that prefers the comfortable illusions.
He had that quote, right? Truth tellers are generally lonely. That hits hard. It connects intelligence directly to potential social unhappiness.
Definitely. The pursuit of truth, as Nietzsche saw it, can push you away from the easy consensus, the shared beliefs that, hold society together. Intellect makes you doubt, and doubt can isolate you.
But unlike Schopenhauer, Nietzsche didn't see this isolation or suffering as just bad.
No, that's the key difference. He talked about positive suffering. It's not something to just passively accept, but something to embrace, almost weaponize for your own growth.
Positive suffering, how does that work?
It's the idea that challenges, difficulties, the very pain of understanding hard truths, these are what shape you. They force you to overcome, to define yourself. Remember his other famous line?
What doesn't kill us
makes us stronger. Or, as it's sometimes translated in this context, the pain that cuts you makes you truly you. It's about transformation through struggle.
So the intellect makes life uncomfortable, forces you to see things you might rather ignore.
But that very discomfort is the spark. It's what pushes you to create your own meaning, your own values, in a world that doesn't hand them to you. Pain becomes, for Nietzsche, a catalyst for creation, a leap.
Oh, okay, that's a powerful, if demanding, perspective. Now, what about Gracián? His picture of the wise person seems quieter.
Much quieter.
Yeah.
Less about cosmic suffering or heroic struggle, more about practical conduct. Gracián observed that wise people tend to be, well, reserved.
Reserved how?
Measured in speech, those who know much say little. That's his famous line. They're cautious, not easily impressed or amused, maybe a bit distrustful.
So wisdom leads to holding back.
In a way. It seems Gracián linked deep understanding with a sort of guardedness. Knowing more about the world, about people, makes you more aware of, potential pitfalls, misunderstandings, deception, just complexity.
So less likely to jump into things, less likely to wear your heart on your sleeve.
Pretty much. And also less likely to be swept away by simple pleasures or strong emotions. For Gracián, wisdom wasn't just about knowing stuff. It was crucially about self-control, prudence, restraint.
Okay, so the wise person, in his view, isn't easily overjoyed or easily upset. They have this kind of inner regulation.
Exactly. Self-mastery was key, which, you can look at that today and think it sounds a bit drab, less fun. We often value big emotions, enthusiasm.
Right, we like seeing people enjoy themselves.
But Gracián saw danger in too much enjoyment, too little control. He said, the more pleasures increase, the more mastery decreases. And when mastery is lost, life goes astray.
So wisdom means knowing when to stop. Moderation.
Precisely. It's not about being a killjoy, necessarily, but about being prudent, understanding limits, knowing that unchecked desires can lead you off course.
So Gracián sees the potential unhappiness more in terms of social friction, maybe? Emotional guardedness? A kind of realism about people that stops you from being overly trusting or enthusiastic.
I think that's a good way to put it. He analyzed it through social interactions, emotional regulation, human nature. His conclusion sort of sums it up. Wisdom opens the door to solitude, and restraint is the key to staying within. It paints a picture of a more self-contained life.
Okay, so putting it all together, Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, Gracián, they offer really different angles, but they all seem to agree on the basic premise that wisdom can lead to unhappiness.
Yeah, that's the fascinating through line. Schopenhauer sees wisdom deepening our sense of suffering. Nietzsche sees it as a fire we have to walk through to grow. Gracián sees it leading to a kind of cautious restraint.
They all challenge that simple idea that knowing more automatically makes life better or easier or happier.
Absolutely. They suggest that the path of wisdom comes with its own unique burdens, whether it's heightened sensitivity to pain, the loneliness of dissent, or the burden of self-control.
But importantly, it's not like they're saying this unhappiness is a failure or falling to some lower state.
Not at all. It's more like leveling up, entering a higher state of awareness, maybe. But that higher state isn't necessarily comfortable. It has its own challenges.
Right. You might become less easily pleased, maybe more wary of others, certainly more aware of illusions you used to believe.
Yeah. The blinders come off.
Which really brings us back to that question for you listening. Doesn't it sometimes feel like ignorance is bliss? Like, wouldn't it be easier sometimes not to know so much, not to think so deeply?
It's tempting, right? But what these philosophers seem to be telling us is something else. They're saying, look, wisdom isn't a cure, but a state of being awake.
Being awake, seeing things as they are, warts and all.
Exactly. Even if that clarity brings pain or loneliness or certain sadness sometimes.
But maybe that very awakeness, that deeper understanding, even with its difficulties, is what ultimately makes you stronger.
That's the potential upside they hint at. It might allow for deeper connections when they do happen, more courage in facing life's realities, maybe a more profound kind of love or empathy. precisely because you're not relying on illusions.
It's not about chasing happiness directly, perhaps, but about embracing the fullness of experience, the understanding, even when it's hard.
Yeah. Living an examined life, even if the examination reveals uncomfortable truths, it's a powerful thought to carry with us.
Today's Sage Sync ends here. I will come back next time with another life wisdom. Thank you.